Months of tension decided that diplomatic warnings were no longer on. The first alarms came from Alberta, where officials reported U.S. companions exploiting loopholes in the USMCA to undercut Canadian prices. The Imbalan Sethriatanta carefully managed its system, forcing the government to act. Canada's supply management system controls production and ensures stable prices. While the U.S. market-driven approach often leads to overproduction, the surge in U.S. exports was seen as an attack on Canada's agricultural policy. After failed negotiations, Canada announced iterated tariffs, shocking the American dairy industry. The Canadian government argued these measures were necessary to protect its farmers from predatory U.S. trade practices. The move cut off American farmers from a vital revenue stream. This wasn't just a minor trade spat. It was a fundamental clash of economic philosophies. The stage was set for a confrontation with devastating consequences. For American farmers, the loss of the Canadian market was immediate and severe. The trade war had begun, and neither side was backing down. Canada responded with tariffs up to 300% on U.S. dairy products, milk, cheese, yogurt, and butter. The goal? Make U.S. dairy unsellable in Canada. Canadian officials cited repeated U.S. violations of import quotas, claiming American companions flooded the market and hurt local producers. The tariffs were enforced instantly at every border crossing. A $100,000 shipment of cheese now costs $400,000, making us dairy uncompetitive overnight. The American dairy industry was blindsided. A 300% tariff is an economic weapon, closes a market entirely. U.S. exporters scrambled to assess the damage, as Canada was one of their largest markets. The sudden tariff wall severed a critical pipeline for American dairy. Canada framed the tariffs as a defensive necessity to protect its farmers from U.S. overproduction. The message: Canada would not be a dumping ground for America's surplus. U.S. dairy associations protested, but the border remained closed. Tariffs exposed the vulnerability of relying on export markets. The crisis was no longer theoretical. It was a full-scale economic blockade. American dairy was frozen out with no easy way back in. Tariffs created chaos at the border. Over 200 containers of U.S. dairy were blocked from entering Canada. Canadian customs refused entry unless massive entities were paid, so importers rejected shipments. Perishable goods like cheese and yogurt began to spoil. Asterisks were turned away. Exporters faced a grim choice. Media exporters in office making phone calls. Workers deciding what to do with returned dairy shipments. Ship products back, find new buyers fast, or destroy them. In many cases, millions of pounds of food were simply discarded. Truck drivers were stranded, their cargo worthless. Thirst was staggering. Not just food, but resources behind it. The border blockade became a symbol of the trade war's human and economic toll. With Canada closed, rejected dairy flooded back into the U.S. market, creating a massive overup. Warehouses and distribution centers overflowed, driving prices down. Supermarkets offered deep discounts and promotions to clear theglet. Much of this dairy was near expiration after weeks in transit, but consumers weren't told. Turned products were quietly repackaged and sold domestically. This lack of transparency raised concerns about food integrity. The flood of cheap dairy undercut American farmers, forcing Semedo dump milk as storage filled up. Theonistic market buckled under the weight of the surplus. What looked like abundance masked a deeper crisis for producers. The trade war's impact was felt in every grocery aisle. American farmers paid the price for a dispute they didn't create. The crisis lights the stark contrast between Canada's supply management and America's market-driven dairy system. Canada tightly controls production with quotas, ensuring stable prices and avoiding chronic surplus. The U.S. encourages maximum production, leading to boom and bust cycles and persistent overproduction. When export markets close, Coast follows Canada's system also enforces strict quality standards like banning RBE. Switch is allowed in the U.S. This difference fuels trade friction, as Canadian regulators reject U.S. products that don't meet their standards. The American system's instability is exposed. Without Canada to absorb the surplus, U.S. farmers face a crisis off their own making. Overproduction, once a strength, is now a critical vulnerability. Canada's system, thought criticized for higher prices, gives its farmers security. Americans can only invite. The risks of prioritizing volume over stability are now painfully clear. The trade war is a lesson in the cost of chaos versus control. The loss of the Canadian market is costing us dairy producers billions. States like Wisconsin and New York, reliant on exports, are hit hardest. Dairy cooperatives face bankruptcy as revenue plummet. Cold storage is maxed out, adding costs for struggling companies that the crisis ripples through rural economies. Feed suppliers, equipment dealers, and truckers all suffer. Farmers stop spending, threaten engender communities. The promise of global trade has evaporated, replaced by economic devastation. Overflowing storage is a ticking time bomb. Some producers are dumping milk for lack of space. This isn't just lost profit, it's a systemic failure pushing America's dairy land to the brink. Thousands of livelihoods now hang in Thebulance. The dairy dispute has damaged America's reputation as a reliable food supplier. Canada's rejection of US products and steep tariffs sent a global message: U.S. dairy may not meet standards. The lack of a strong federal response has made things worse. Other countries like the EU, Japan, and Australia are rethinking their own trade agreements with the U.S. They fear America will dump its surplus in them, destabilizing their markets. The crisis is eroding trust, the most valuable commodity in global trade. It raises questions about the integrity of the entire U.S. food system. If us dairies rejected for quality, what about our exports? International buyers are looking elsewhere. The U.S. risks being labeled à la coste, low-quality producer. The government's inaction is a critical blow to America's global food standing. The damage goes beyond dairy. It threatens an entire brand. USA. Restoring trust will be a long, uphill battle. The dairy crisis is more than a trade spat. It's a warning of systemic risk. The U.S. government's inaction is the most dangerous factor. Failing to address tariffs, support farmers, or manage a surplus, Washington is gambling with the food system's future. Consumers are unknowingly buying products Canada rejected with no special labeling. This lack of transparency betrays consumer trust and risks food safety. Other nations are considering their own tariffs, fearing U.S. instability. A wave of retaliatory tariffs could use exports and shock the global economy. America risks isolation, turning from trade leader to pariah. Stability of the food supply in America's global goal is at stake. Without decisive action, the crisis will deepen. More bankruptcies, broken communities, and lost trust. The U.S. stands at a crossroads: fix the system, or risk a meltdown felt far beyond the Darrielle. The choice will define America's future for years to come.